Hey everybody, welcome back to Nikki T Live Friday edition. I'm your host Nick Taylor, and today I'm hanging out with my friend Josh Goldberg. Josh, how you doing today?
Good. I couldn't hear you, and then I unmuted Twitch. Now I can hear you. So life is good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's we've hung out a couple times on the stream before, and it's a lot of fun. I'll do some shameless plugs for you because I don't have your Twitch command, but Josh has written a book on TypeScript if you weren't aware. So if you want to check that out, I've been doing renovations in my basement, so I don't have it on my bookshelf at the moment. But it's the Learning TypeScript book. I highly recommend it. Josh, I actually I paid for it. Josh did not send me a copy. It's a really good book. Um, I'll
Thought I
talk
sent you a
about.
copy also.
Oh yeah, no, that's not what I was implying. All I meant is like it's
Sure,
worth
sure.
buying it.
Yeah, no.
But if you want to send one, yeah, go for it. But yeah, I just want to talk about the book briefly. I know we're talking about other stuff today, but I really like how you teach things because you go into details like from the fundamentals. Not even like you don't even start off with TypeScript. You're like, what is a type and so on. And then you have really good examples and you just progress through the book. So I highly recommend it if you're learning TypeScript or even if you aren't learning TypeScript or I mean, you're always learning it, I guess. But like as somebody who's been using TypeScript for quite a while, I still found it refreshing to read through, and I definitely learned to. I think this is what I mentioned to you when we talked about it, but I never realized what the difference between parameter and argument was,
Yeah.
and because like you and like I still use them interchangeably a lot of times, but I do know the difference now, and it's little things like that because like how things are named matters when you're explaining things for sure. So anyways,
Yeah. It's one of those
cool,
things that
cool,
you
cool.
really care about if and only if you're explaining things in this specific way, and then otherwise, like, why would you care? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, uh, we're 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 kind of indirectly talking about TypeScript, and I'll try and make a terrible segue. You work on the TypeScript-eslint project, which is part of it. It's a separate project from eslint. I don't think they've merged. They're not in the same org. Is that correct? Or
Correct. Yeah. They're two root level
yeah.
projects that are separate, but talk to each other quite a bit, of course.
Okay. Yeah, so like anybody who's done front end or like Node.js um, is pretty familiar, I imagine, at this point with ESLint, whether you've configured it yourself or if you're using a meta framework, these things are just present in your tool chain. And so, yeah, Josh has been doing a lot of great work on the TypeScript ESLint project, among others, including the Mocha project more recently. So kudos to that. Um, but I guess this is something I hadn't thought about. I came across your blog post, and I'm gonna drop it in the chat here. And it's called open it up. Let me close. I've got all these windows. I was checking to make sure I
Yeah.
was streaming on every platform. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, but I just want to make sure I close everything before I start sharing my screen so we don't get inception. Not that I have anything to hide, but okay, let's go to pairing view here for a sec. And so you have this blog post you wrote recently called "You Probably Don't Need eslint-config-prettier or eslint-plugin-prettier," and I'm a big fan of Prettier, big fan of eslint. I think these things are great tools to keep your code maintained. Um, but I honestly never occurred to me that like I might not need these two projects because I'll let you definitely go into it in more depth, but typically ESLint, you have rules, like use const instead of let, stuff like that. Maybe prefer destructuring, etc. And then you have Prettier, which is mainly dealing with formatting, and it's a great project. But they tradition like I think when it first came out, it started conflicting with ESLint because they both use the abstract syntax tree to basically format or correct your code. And so I'm guessing the Prettier team, or maybe it was the ESLint team, or maybe together they created these two, this config and this plugin. And I every time I've used both of these things in a project, which is pretty much any project that has JavaScript in it, I pop these in as part of like my configuration, and I don't know if you wanna kinda, like, summarize, like, I mean, the title I think says it all, but, like,
Sure.
kinda maybe, like, dig into that a bit more as to why that's the case?
Yeah, sure. I think the root level issue, by the way, great explanation, honestly. You nailed it. Thank you. A lot of
Oh,
people, like,
thanks.
say I'm a member of the TypeScript team or something, then I have to spend 13 minutes explaining the difference, and that didn't happen here. The root level issue is that a lot of these terms sound like the same thing. Like an
Okay.
ESLint config versus an ESLint plugin, what's the difference? Formatting
Yeah,
versus style, what's the difference? But there are differences, like the difference between a parameter and argument. But in this case, is
yeah,
actually relevant to everyone when they are setting up their tooling. So
yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
ESLint deals with one and a half areas of responsibility. It deals with logical things and it
okay,
deals with half of style. Logical things would be like you said, like let versus const, or like do you create a variable and don't use it, or like with type2 ESLint, you create a promise and then don't handle if it rejects. That's logic.
yeah,
Then there's also stylistic consistency, which has some overlap because, like, arguably sometimes let versus const is stylistic. But
yeah, for sure.
within style, yeah, there's formatting, which is like indenting with tabs or two spaces or four spaces or whatever.
Yeah,
And when ESLint first came out, linters did that area of style, that formatting. Then along
okay,
came things like Prettier, which just did all the formatting for you. Uh,
yeah,
so then there was overlap. And that's why people made eslint-config-prettier, which just disables any eslint rules that might conflict with Prettier. And they made eslint-plugin-prettier, which runs Prettier as an eslint rule. So those two
okay,
things are both valuable and potentially useful if you are writing eslint and don't want it to get in the way of Prettier or vice versa.
okay.
But we can go into later why that's no longer super necessary in most projects.
Yeah,
Does that make
well, I
sense?
mean, I guess yeah, yeah, no, it makes total sense. I mean, and so, part of the reason of doing this stream is, I work over at OpenSauced, and, I read your blog post because 'cause we're both in, the virtual coffee community. I think I met you well, I haven't met you in person yet, but I think that's maybe the first place where I started chatting with you. But this is where I came across your blog post. Somebody had posted it in the articles and resources channel, I think. And then I was like, well, we use it at OpenSauce because I know because I didn't set that up, but I've definitely tweaked some things since being here. And so aside from the blog post, I thought it would be well, it's kind of fun and beneficial, but uh, I guess kind of diving into the open source configuration for ESLint and Prettier, and see, or it's probably more ESLint, not Prettier. But seeing if we can actually remove these two things that you're mentioning in the blog post. I'm assuming it should be possible with our setup, because I don't think we have anything too bizarre. It's a Next.js application. We have, I think, maybe a couple custom rules, and then there's Prettier in it. So like, I don't think there's anything like super bespoke we've done in terms of ESLint. So or Prettier
Great.
and Prettier as well. Anyways, there's not much you can configure. Typically, you have like a minimal config. But oh, hey, Elian, how's it going? Elian from the Astro team is here. Thanks for joining us.
Shout out Alien. Hi.
Uh, Oh, yeah, Alien saying, I have to go to London. Okay, I won't say no.
Yeah. I'm still upset we haven't met in person, Nick. It's bizarre. We've been talking for ages.
Yeah,
Ages.
yeah, no, it's kind of funny. Well, we almost met last year in Toronto, I think it last year or the year before? Um, you
I
were visiting
forget.
no, it was 2 years ago, and I was visiting, some family in Toronto, and you're down in you're up in sorry, not up, you're down in New York City, and I think you were heading to Toronto for I think you were visiting your aunt or something. Hey, how's it going, Todd?
Mhm. Todd.
Um yeah, and then, like, we're like, "Yeah, let's meet up," and then I think just the way it fell, it was like it just didn't work out, you know? But yeah, I'm hoping we're definitely gonna meet up at some point. I know it'll happen,
Definitely.
so we'll make it happen.
We'll make it happen.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, so let's, why don't we just take a peek here at I can load up, you should be able to see my screen there, Josh. I shared in the guest star,
I
and
see my article and your VS Code now.
yeah, okay, cool, cool, cool.
What are these
Alright, so let's switch.
emojis?
Oh yeah, that's I think oh, yeah, Todd's moving around the lobster. If you happen to be in Twitch, you can move the lobster who I've the command is Todd, so you do like Todd dash up, for example. There's a few others I'll drop in there, but if you do this, so like Todd up, you should see the lobster move in a second.
But no,
And
I was asking about the emojis in your VS Code, top middle around the word app. What is this? How
oh,
did you get
okay,
that?
that's in my settings. Here, I'll show you that. We'll take a slight detour real quick here. So in VS Code, you can actually modify the window title.
I love it. Oh
So
my god.
I just I just have it in here. You can put whatever. I had lightning bolts at one point. The it's not describing my mood, but the melting emoji just always cracks me up. Um,
It's a good
and
emoji. Yeah.
yeah, and I've been using the salute one a lot, and the I don't know what you call this. It's like a devil's mask or something. I don't know what it is, but it shows up on my alpaca on screen. At some point, I'll switch it right now and see if he switches up.
Dope.
But aside from lobster, there's donuts. There's a poop emoji that I can pop on the screen there. Folks want to move that around. That's only on Twitch, but anyways, I
Hail Satan.
digress. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I guess at this point, I don't need, it's not like I need to start the app or anything. We should just kind of take a peek at the config, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of
Yeah.
working in what we call static analysis, things like eslint and prettier.
Y-
They work
Yeah.
without running your code, so just do it.
Okay. First thing, this app was created, I think maybe 3 years ago, or I know B Dougie started working on it in maybe 2017. I don't know if it's this particular incarnation of it, but I'm only bringing that up because like we're using the .json format, and I can't remember if it was when we were chatting on stream, but there's a new eslint config that's it's like flattened now. Is that like shipped in standard now, or is that still experimental or
It's shipped in standard. Fun fact: since then, I've joined the eslint team. So this is now
okay,
me
I didn't
repping the
realize you were on
thing.
that.
Yeah, I
Okay,
didn't do
okay.
anything to work on flat config on eslint side, but I will now advertise it.
Okay, okay.
It's Yeah, so there's a new config. It's called flat because you can only now have one eslint file in your root level, and you can do all the same
Okay.
things you used to be able to do basically with that file, as opposed to today, the legacy current what you're using, which is you can have eslints anywhere that override parent eslints, and it gets shockingly, surprisingly difficult to maintain.
Okay, okay, so that's what you mean. So there's no longer any kind of inheritance and stuff?
Yeah, all the inheritance is just you define it in this one file. You can still do everything. It's not losing functionality. It's just all in one place
Okay.
now.
Okay, and then so like I guess you would say like because like previously like in the root here I'm extending like
Yeah.
certain rules here, but like I know like for example with like end-to-end tests, I would have like a ESLint config in there, and it would just basically add some Cypress rules, and either it doesn't extend my existing one, or maybe it does, but it just adds on a few rules. So
Yeah.
now with the flattened config, is it more like you specify a directory and then you add additional rules, or uh,
Yeah.
I'm kind of going
The
off of what
fact
we're
that you
supposed to
have
talk
to
about
ask
today?
No, 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 this is good, this is good. The fact that you even have to ask, does it extend? Does it automatically? Does it override? Is part of why the flat config is so nice. You no longer have to ask. But yeah, in the flat
Okay.
config system, you use the same overrides feature that's actually already in most ESLint configs. You say
Okay.
overrides in the root level to do what you might otherwise have separately, alternately done with like a nested ESLint
Okay.
config.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Cool.
But we
Cool.
don't have to change now. We don't even like TypeScript ESLint support for it is shipping on Monday. Not every plugin has it. It's fine for now to just let's keep it in the eslint.rc.json. That's okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm just thinking. I'm like thinking future, like as another like refactor, and I guess
Mhm.
a question about that, and we can definitely stop talking about this so we can focus on what we're supposed to. But like meta frameworks, like for example, Next.js, if you install it right now, they're not going to ship the flat config, right? They're going to just keep uh like I imagine it
Yeah.
because it's kind of a breaking change at some point if you're upgrading. Um,
Y- Yeah, so I actually just posted yesterday an issue on the ESLint issue tracker
okay,
tracking flat config rollout that has like a big table of like a little more than 50 of the most popular things that integrate with ESLint, like plugins and editor extensions. A lot of them
okay,
have support. Next.js has an issue filed with a pull request that someone started and then I think didn't have time to finish yet. So apparently it's in progress, but that's all
Okay.
I know about the Next.js side.
Yeah. I know they're pretty good about upgrade paths usually, so I imagine there'll be something there that just makes it seamless, unless you have a lot of custom stuff maybe, but uh, okay, cool.
We'll see. Should be.
Nice. All right. So, yeah, so okay, so I'll show you what, well, I know you're very familiar with these files. So, so like you can already
For the
see right
viewers.
here. Yeah, yeah. So like already you can see like there's a plugin prettier recommended, which is extended. So, and there's also down here, this is a custom rule that we added, I guess.
Mhm.
That was added 4 months ago. I'm not sure why that was added, but, I'm sure there's a good reason. Um, so like when you go about starting to remove this, do we just like really just start and just delete this here and then just keep going down the file, or what do you recommend in terms of approach?
Yeah, there are two paths we could take, both of which are valid and good and make me happy. One is the direct approach of let's just delete all the prettier from eslint and then we'll
Okay.
remake it in prettier. Or we can like
Okay.
go through and as we delete them, like go through like what each one is, why it was there, what it did, why we don't need that. But like I defer to you, of course.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Well, one, I'm being a little selfish here, but it would be good for me to understand what's. I mean, I have pretty much an idea of why they're there, but like it'd be nice to just maybe hear a bit more about it. So let's start off with like the extends here, and this is something in general I've always been confused about with ESLint. Like the prefix with plugin colon, like for
Mhm.
example, storybook recommended and stuff like and I know ESLint has plugins and I'm curious like why go the extends route versus the plugin
Sure.
it's like naming stuff that always confused me to be honest and I would just copy paste what like directions would
Yeah.
say.
This is what happens when your tool is open source. It is hard to make comprehensive docs for it over time, especially as things change. But there were three words here that will help and are really useful for learning and understanding all this stuff.
Okay.
Extends, config, and plugin. Let's
Yeah.
go through those in not quite that order. Uh,
Okay.
so in ESLint, there's a concept of a config or shareable config, which is something you can extend from. A
Yeah.
shareable config is ba- for the most part a list of rule settings. It doesn't create the
Hmm.
rules for you. It doesn't like load in any custom rules. A config just says, given these names of rules, these are the settings we want. On,
Okay.
error, warning, whatever options, and so on. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that makes total sense and I get why you would extend it. You're basically composing like a set of rules and then you might
Yeah.
add something else after that extends. Yeah, no, that makes total
Yeah,
sense.
for sure. Yeah. Like I think what one of the that concept like I have a config file that is based on some other config file or files. That's pretty common. Like most tools that have
Yeah.
config files allow that. What trips people up though is that plugins can export a shareable config. So like the
Okay.
Storybook plugin, just to use an example because it's a little easier than explaining either of the others. The
Yeah.
Storybook plugin exposes at least two things. It exposes a bunch of custom rules that they wrote that are specific to Storybook,
Hmm.
and they expose a config that enables those rules. So
Okay.
when you say extends plugin storybook, you're just referring to the config part of that. You're saying I want all the rules settings that storybook gives me, and then storybook is also able
Okay.
to add in its plugins so that it also loads on those rules. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Okay. Yeah, makes sense too. Okay.
Cool. So
Cool,
that's
cool.
extends, configs, and plugin. A plugin defines rules and or a config. A config is a set of settings, and then extends lets you load in from a plugin
Okay,
or
gotcha.
config.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. So, and I guess the thing here, like I was saying, was like we're extending uh the config here with the storybook recommended, but why, like for example, why wouldn't I do this instead? Like put it down
Storybook
here
recommended.
like
Great
that.
question. It irritates me that sometimes you have to and sometimes you don't. It's like kind of confusing. And actually, flat config makes this better. But yeah,
Okay.
so in theory, you should have to do what you just suggested. The plugins property, that array of strings, tells ESLint
Yeah.
to load in rules from these plugins.
Okay.
But also, it looks like the ESLint plugins storybook config adds in storybook as a plugin. So it does it for you. We don't do
Oh,
that in
okay, okay.
typescript-eslint because we want people to know explicitly what they're doing in legacy
Yeah.
config, but not everyone has that same opinion. So sometimes you have to, sometimes you don't. It'll get better soon.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was just I always kind of wondered that because I mean, I know at
Yeah.
the end of the day you're just bringing in all these rules, but the naming and it matters. So, okay, no, that's super
Yeah.
clear. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Okay, so if we move down here, yeah, and I guess we might as well do like a mini primer of an ESLint config too. So you mentioned like
Sure.
extends, plugin, and then now we have the rules section, and this is where you can add your own custom rules, I imagine, right? Because like we have some here, or you can even modify existing ones, like tweak them. Because like I know some they might error out. In some other cases, you might want to say like I want to make it a warning for whatever reason.
Yep.
um, yeah, okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah. So the rules setting object is a key value, map object, whatever you want to call it, where each key is the name of a rule, and the value is its severity level, and optionally also its options. And yeah, this can be built-in ESLint rules, such as line 18 and 19, no console, no debugger. ESLint will
Yeah,
yell at you if you use those things. Um, or it can be a rule defined in a plugin. For example, line 20 or line 12. It's the name of the
yeah,
plugin slash the name of the rule.
yeah. I'm familiar with this one because I added this
Hmm,
a couple months ago. The
nice.
uh,
Good,
yeah, because
good stuff.
I ran into a problem where you know I on can't speak for anybody everybody else who maintains projects, but a lot of times I've been like the main person who is maintaining the front end of a code base, and I do whatever I can to just make my life easier. And this here we
Yeah.
had examples of uh I think there was I forget where it was. Oh yeah, it was for TypeScript types. They were using camel case, and I knew it was a type because like obviously it says type or interface, but it's still when I look at it, it's not the normal convention. So I put this in explicitly to throw an error.
Love it.
And I'm curious, is this like if you do the TypeScript ESLint recommended, is this included in that? Because I don't know if I don't think we have the TypeScript ESLint recommended, do we? No, we
How
don't.
dare you? How
Yeah,
dare you not
yeah.
exclude from our
There's
recommended?
like yeah. No, there's
That's
like
fine. It's reasonable.
no, 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 I know, it's just, like, I've been busy with a lot of feature work, but there's,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
all these things I've been keeping stock of that, like, I wanna revisit, and, like, I did this when I was at Dev 2 as well. We had the RMB, lint rules in, which I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about. They're
Mhm.
really strict, and there's a lot like, it's good to have your conventions, but there was a lot of rules I just didn't it didn't make sense to me, and so I
Sure.
basically we were using Preact at Dev 2, so I literally scrapped all the Airbnb. I just went with ESLint recommended, Preact recommended, and then I left it at that, and I might have added a
Beautiful.
couple custom things because like, um, but I guess that's a good example of like a team, like it was the Airbnb team, they said this is how we do it. Not to pretend, I feel like I'm about to sing a song, uh, but like for them, it made sense, but it just got popularized, I think, because it was kind of during the rise of React as well. So everybody's like, oh, Airbnb uses it, we should use it.
Yeah.
And so,
It's
anyways,
honestly a fascinating sociological study. Also, Elian, I don't know if this is just a beautifully natural segue, but Elian asked in the chat about this Airbnb
yeah,
plugin. But yeah, Airbnb open sourced, which is wonderful of them, their personal, like their company standard style guide, because they're a big company. It was
yeah,
pretty applicable, to a lot of different types of teams. So a lot of people picked it up. Over the years,
yeah,
though, it's become less and less useful to use Airbnb's presets because
yeah,
the ES recommended preset just got a lot better over time. And especially also the TypeScript recommended preset got a lot better over time. So
yeah,
I don't personally use Airbnb's thing. I have in the past. I no longer find need. Back in the day, before I stopped using it, I don't know if it's changed since, it was way too opinionated for most people. Like, it's honestly the
yeah.
Airbnb plugin both helped ESLint a lot by helping people adopt it and also hurt ESLint it, because it was really strict and people thought ESLint was just naturally strict. And now you see
Oh,
people
okay.
posting on Twitter constantly about how some lint rule in this 3-year-old code base annoys them. ESLint is bad, which honestly really irritates me. So,
Yeah,
up to you.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, like I remember like one thing there was like it was saying like you always had to use like arrow functions, and which I mean I use arrow functions a lot, but I also write regular functions too, and it's like stuff like that, and it's just slowly just it just kind of ground me down that I
Needles
said,
you,
you know
yeah.
what, I'm doing a reset. And I was also able to do the reset because I was pretty much the only person doing the front end at dev too, so I just said I'm switching it.
Much
I
needed.
did get an awesome coworker later on. I mean, there was other people on the team obviously, but they were more like back end, like Rails devs. They did full stack too, but like I did get to work with my awesome old coworker Suzanne Aitchison, who's still at Netlify. I went to Netlify, then she came to Netlify, and so who knows? I don't know if that means she'll end up at OpenSauced at some point, but
Let's hope. But
okay,
by the way,
cool, cool.
I do want to answer your question from earlier. Is this in the recommended preset? So first of all, yeah,
Oh yeah,
I'm not to be clear. Who anyone who doesn't have context on us, then how dare you? As in joke. If you don't have time to enable a whole bunch of lint rules and fix their warnings or whatever, it's totally reasonable. But yeah, if anyone is ever curious about the recommended presets, does this rule come with it? Is it enabled? Whatever. They're all documented online. eslint.org, typescript-eslint.io for core and TypeScript respectively. And we have like a nice queryable, like a filterable table with like all these different options to sort, or it's part of me to filter in our rules page. So
yeah,
if you go to rules, it'll show you which ones are enabled in our different presets. And then naming conventions specifically, which I actually have open, I can just post in the chat. All the rules say what their default options are and like a TypeScript type description of the option shape. So I can tell you for certain that naming convention is not enabled in the recommended rule set, because if we did that, people would absolutely destroy us personally online. But
okay,
the default options for naming convention do enforce what literally the exact same thing you did. If it's a type
okay,
like, put it in Pascal case.
yeah.
Ta-da!
Yeah. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I don't know. It's just there's stuff like, obviously like I was well, it wasn't brand new to the project. Like I had started contributing to it a couple years ago, but as I like obviously started working there, I just like, start seeing stuff in the code base. I'm like, okay, and taking notes like, okay, this. And a little side note about like ESLint or Prettier, these are it's just they're just really a good like I know there's like this whole debate about like pre-commit hooks and stuff, and I was talking about that with somebody the other day, and I think for like in like obviously do whatever your team decides, but I found like especially in open source because not everybody has the same editor, they might but they might have a different config. So like having these things uniform, and running them on CI/CD and stuff like that's how I prefer to do them, and it just helps me keep the code maintained because otherwise, if it doesn't run it the pre-commit hook, and you can skip the pre-commit hooks, which is why you should do it on the server too,
Yeah.
because or in your CI/CD pipeline. Because like the last thing I want to do is like a year from now, all of a sudden start having to fix all these things. Because I remember at Dev 2 we had this no joke, it was a 1 year ESLint cleanup, and it was because like there was a lot of things that needed to be fixed, and basically what I did was all these things that were giving errors once I think I had switched some rules. I think this might have been when I did the recommended. I can't remember the exact flow, but what I did was I put a lot of things as warnings so it wouldn't fail the build so that people could actually like fix them. And then basically once we hit literal zero lint errors, that's when I put it back to error and strict.
Mm,
And then after that it was fine. But it was like
nice.
it's the kind of thing that can get out of hand. It's like, you got to get a
Yeah,
haircut sometimes too. So like, I don't know. I don't
for
know if that
sure.
makes sense. Yeah. Okay, cool, cool,
I
cool.
relate to that.
Uh, speaking of which, I do need a haircut. I'm starting to look like the Lion King here.
I like
Um,
it. I like the spikiness.
it's funny, like I don't have anything in my hair right now, and my hair just kind of sticks
It's
up. I
just
don't know why,
natural.
but yeah, so I don't know if there's something in my genes that make my hair rigid or what, but okay, cool. So we've kind of given like the lowdown on kind of everything that's happening in an ESLint config. So in regards to Prettier now, so should we just go ahead and like literally just nuke this and then start? going from there,
Yeah.
or okay,
Yeah.
cool. So
Um, so can you tell me the thing you just selected and or I think about to delete, what does that do?
yeah, so this is in the extends of the ESLint configuration. So it is a plugin, but it's a set of rules, and those are getting pulled in so that anybody using this file will just inherit those rules with it. I mean, we only happen to have it in this one file folder where
Mhm.
it's being used, so which is at the root. So this is basically bringing in all the prettier recommended rules, and this is good. I'm gonna remove it, but what is in there exactly? Because like we've talked about this before, and I know you're super well versed at all this stuff. So like we have like the linting rules, like we were saying, like let versus const, prefer destructuring, etc. The prettier just does formatting. So when those rules are when that plugin of recommended rules is in, is it
Mhm.
just saying turn off like this rule from ESLint? Is that what's in these configs
Ah.
or
Great question. So
okay?
there is a difference between eslint-config-prettier and eslint-plugin-prettier, which is a
Oh,
big
okay,
part of
okay,
why I wrote the article. There's actually a shout out to Anisha in the blog post footer. We
okay.
met at a conference, and she reminded me that like no one ever knows the difference between eslint-config and eslint-plugin anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay,
shout out Anisha Malda. But yeah, so an eslint-config just is a bunch of rules. A plugin might also define rules. But as you
okay,
said, hang on a second. ESLint does in potential formatting. Like there are ESLint rules that can format, and then also Prettier does formatting. So what
yeah,
ESLint plugin Prettier, which defines a rule that you currently use on line 9, is it creates a
yeah.
single rule called Prettier. So Prettier slash
Okay,
Prettier or ESLint
yeah,
plugin Prettier slash Prettier. That
yeah.
rule runs Prettier. It runs the Node API for Prettier, and then outputs the output of Prettier as an ESLint rules report. So you're running
Okay.
Prettier, the entirety of Prettier basically, except the CLI, within an ESLint rule, which is actually a really
Oh,
cute way of doing things.
okay. But that means that my regular prettier is running, and then it's running again.
Is your Redditor?
Is that
Like,
right?
I honestly forgot to check. Do you have Prettier enabled in this repo separate from the ESLint plugin?
Yeah. So like if we go to the well, unless I'm misunderstanding, but we have prettier like here. Let me go dev dependencies. Yeah, so we
Okay, so
have
you
prettier
have it,
here, and we do
and
run
you
it
have
because
it
I
on
know.
line 162.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, oh yeah.
So you're
That's for the pre-commit hooks.
you're right. You are right. You're doing Prettier twice. Twice. You're
Okay.
doing it as a lint rule and then also in lint staged as a CLI.
Okay, so just to understand, when you have those configs in ESLint, you don't even need to add the prettiers to do the writes. Like when ESLint runs with fix, it will actually format prettier as well. Is that what you're saying?
I'm I think so. I'm saying if you have the
Okay.
Prettier ESLint rule enabled and you run ESLint with dash dash fix, then yes, what you're saying that the
Okay.
ESLint will auto fix for you. So you can either enable Prettier on its own, the way you have in your package JSON, and or
Yeah.
you can enable it as an ESLint rule with ESLint plugin Prettier. Also, hi Austin.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, so we literally are running it twice. So like in essence, like right now, like say we didn't remove it, I should probably just do this and let it run on those, and then here when the
Yep.
fix runs, it's gonna run prettier like it would normally. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Okay. That's good to know. Cool. Well, I'm gonna leave this like that anyways, because or no, actually I should leave it like this because we want Prettier
You want
eventually
it.
to just run on its own. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Cool. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we do have like one custom Prettier rule here. So is this something I should put into the actual Prettier config then? Or
Um, I do want to. You're using the right word, but because it could mean different things, different contexts. I want to be clear. When you say custom rule, what you're referring to, I believe, is that the Prettier plugin defined a custom ESLint rule. Yeah,
yeah, or what I mean actually is Prettier yeah.
word.
So,
Yeah. So
like,
Prettier is its
yeah,
own separate thing, and what the ESLint Prettier eslint-plugin-prettier rule does is it reads your prettier RC and then uses those settings. But there are some
Okay.
eslint-specific overrides you might want to pass in. So what I'm guessing happens on line 9 of your eslint config with the prettier is that that end of line option probably is off or something other than auto by default, and then
Okay.
it needed for some reason to get changed to auto. I'm guessing it's probably enabled in a by default with a different setting in the extends prettier plugin.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So we've removed that. I'm gonna take this out, but I'm just gonna keep it on like in my notepad for now,
Sure.
just so I can revisit that. Just let me pop that in there. One sec. Doo-doo-doo. Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, so we come back here. I don't think there's anything else prettier. Yeah, there's nothing else prettier related in here except oh yeah, well this. I didn't take that out. Sorry. Okay. So I've
Cool.
scrubbed eslint of prettier here now.
Hooray.
So okay, so eslint's gonna run like it always was, but now because I have prettier in the project, they're gonna conflict. Like this is when you'll see it like it'll change something and then prettier will kick in and format it a second time. That's what will probably happen right now?
Yeah, it depends on what order happens. It might be eslint
Okay.
then prettier or prettier than eslint. I forget how that gets turned into happenings in your it's late
Okay.
stage.
Yeah. Okay. So I basically there's nothing left to do in the eslint config, I guess, right? I can close that.
Yep. I
Okay.
have other comments on your eslint config, but those can wait. They're not related.
Y- Yeah, yeah, we can definitely talk about that if we have time. There's like I said, there's like a whole backlog of stuff in my head of like some cleanup. So yeah, definitely any feedback is definitely welcome. I do want to get the TypeScript ESLint recommended in there at some point. So okay, we don't need to see my settings for VS Code. Nothing to hide, but just really not necessary. Okay, so I can go ahead and close the prettier config right now too, I guess.
Mhm.
Okay. So if we come back to the package JSON now, so like you were saying, I have Prettier installed already, which I did know that. But so typically what we do is like we have this lint here, and I think next lint runs just eslint, I think, or does it run
Yeah.
pretty? And oh, and it was running Prettier as well because we had it included. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So you did something very potentially confusing, by accident, a very common thing to your package scripts. You had a format command that ran the linter,
Yeah.
which is confusing because the linter does more than formatting.
Hmm.
I mean, in theory, it does. In
Yeah.
practice, your config is like a lot of a lot of formatting and style, also because of prettier. But like in practice, especially if you add the types based on the recommended stuff, that's going to get more and
Yeah.
more weird over time.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. 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 Yeah, and it's kind of weird because this says lint, and this is actually calling lint but fixing it. So this should really be more like lint fix or something. Uh,
Yeah,
but okay. I'll take note of that, and then I might have to change that in the CI/CD pipeline. Let me just see if that's used anywhere. Uh, just those two places. Okay, it might be in a GitHub action. I'll have to check, but I'm gonna just
sure.
rename this to lint fix for
Makes
now.
sense.
Okay,
What I
cool.
personally normally do is I'll have like a lint and then maybe like lint fix or something, and then I'll have a format. And the lint will call
Okay,
eslint and the format will call prettier, and never the twain shall meet.
yeah, okay. So we can do format, prettier right, and
Beautiful.
uh, this just does the root though, right? I need to specify like a glob for the whole project, or because this should only run at the root level, right?
Um,
I
I
think.
believe checking my personal configs here. I believe you're good. Um,
Okay.
yeah, dot is like the path to the current directory, and prettier by default will descend into subdirectories and ignore other
Okay,
files.
perfect.
So you're good.
Okay, cool. All right. Awesome. Okay, so at this point, okay, so like we have prettier in the project, like I was saying, if I just go down here. Okay, so we don't need these now, right?
Correct. By the way, we haven't even
Okay.
talked about ESN config prettier. That was just
Oh yeah, yeah.
unused as dev dependency.
Yeah, it was just
So you
sitting
can
there.
delete
Yeah,
it
I didn't
anyway.
see it. Okay. But let's talk about it anyways, because like I think in other projects I've had it in there, like in my config. So what's the difference between the ESLint config prettier versus the ESLint
Mhm.
plugin prettier? And I know you go into this in the blog post, but just for the folks who might prefer
Sure,
video content.
very understandable. Um, yeah, the blog post goes into a lot of things. One of them is ESN config prettier is like totally separate in functionality, very different from the plugin. The plugin runs prettier as a rule, which again think is hilarious and cute and like a really clever strategy. The
Yeah.
config, the config is the opposite. The config disables any commonly known ESLint rule that intersects with prettier formatting.
Okay.
Um, so whereas the plugin runs prettier as part of ESLint, the config removes anything that could possibly do with prettier from ESLint.
Okay.
They're basically the opposite.
Yeah, yeah, okay, gotcha. So basically the only thing we were really doing in ESLint was we fixed that end of line thing. There was a specific rule for prettier, and prettier was just always running within ESLint when ESLint would run, and we also had prettier running on its own, like when we would do the pre-commit hooks there, like down here.
Exactly.
Okay,
Fun.
gotcha. Okay, so let's remove these then. And I guess this is the question I have at this point. Okay, like we've removed everything. How does ESLint work without conflicting with Prettier now? Because that's like getting back to go full
Yeah,
circle. That was the whole reason why these things existed initially. And again, like you said, they might not be necessary. So at this point, like, what do we do?
sure. Yeah, back in the day, recommended rules from uh, ESLint and other plugins for ESLint um, would have like by default have things turned on that conflict with prettier. Like there would be like formatting rules enabled by default. So
Yeah.
ESLint config prettier was really useful because it would turn those off for you. Fortunately, over the years, that has more and more stopped being the thing. Like the
Okay.
ESLint and the TypeScript ESLint and many other ESLint plugins have just stopped enabling rules by default that conflict with Prettier because there are plenty of reasons why Prettier does a much better job at them compared to ESLint.
Yeah.
So you didn't have those nowadays. You most likely didn't have those rules enabled to begin with. So asking ESLint
Okay.
config Prettier to turn them off is like a no op basically.
Okay.
Also,
Gotcha.
shout out to
So
the
as
chat.
long as
ESLintier is a great name. Sorry,
yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks,
don't know
Ryan.
why.
Yeah, so basically, if you're on pretty much like a very new version of ESLint, I mean, you should be updating your dependencies regardless. They just won't ship those formatting rules anymore, is what you're getting at?
Yeah, the current versions of ESLint still have them available if you really want to enable them, but the recommended rule
Okay.
sets don't enable them, and they're all deprecated and moved to like a
Yeah.
separate plugin called ESLint Stylistic, which soon you will
Okay.
have to manually opt into being able to even load the rules from.
Okay. So, okay, no, this it see, this is where like education comes into play because like honestly, if I never saw your blog post, I probably would have been doing this even years from now, to be
Years.
honest, if I'm still using Prettier, you know? So
Yeah.
this is like, and the other thing too is like just, you know, not having stuff in your project that you need that you don't need, it just makes sense, like instead of, updating because we have Dependabot that updates this all the time and it's
Yeah.
like we don't even need it, it's like I mean it's kind of wasted CPU cycles to some degree too, like just like
Yeah.
installing and updates and the planet's already melting, so do your
Yeah.
part, I guess. Don't install
Yeah.
these. Okay.
Save the planet. Don't install ESLint config prettier.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Okay, so is that is essentially it? And like getting
Yeah.
back to here. Okay, yeah. So I can leave this here obviously because now Prettier's just gonna run. And like let's just go to a file for fun. I'll just go to one I was working on somewhat recently. So now let's just do this and save it. Okay, Prettier kicks in. If I do like this, okay, that's TypeScript kicking in, not ESLint. Sorry. I'm trying to think of an ESLint rule to, because even
Oh,
this is formatting.
use the bad name. Name workspace layout props in like snake case
Oh
or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
See what happens
yeah.
if it still
Or no, it
complains.
won't work for that. Sorry. Whoops. Deleting everything. Okay. Yeah. Let's come up here and we'll go workspace. Okay. Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. It's giving the other error workspace not used. But if I go here and just update it, I should have refactored that. But now it's going to give the rule I was talking about. Yeah. It's got to be Pascal case. Okay. Perfect.
Love it. Do you know why it is, by the way, that when you save a file in your specifically Nick Taylor's VS Code on this specific project, it auto formats with prettier on save?
I have the plugin in VS Code, or is there another reason why it does it?
That's half of it. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
VS Code has the concept of formatters, which plugins can provide. There's like a default formatter for a lot of common file types, and then plugins can
Okay.
give you a different one. And then in settings, either in a workspace settings or your user settings, you can specify a what your default formatter is for a file. There you
Yeah.
go, prettier Dino TSJS. And B,
Yeah. And
whether to run that formatter on save.
I'm a big fan. I don't know how you're set up. I format and run eslint on focus lost. So
Ooh,
like if I switch a
spicy.
window, um, I don't know because like I'm sure you've encountered this too. It's like I remember just like going back to my browser and I'm like, why am I not seeing the change? You know, like, oh, I didn't save it. And then once that
Mhm.
happened too many times, I'm just like auto save for the win for sure. Um, but yeah, getting back to what you were saying, yeah, I have all these formatters here defined. So like, whoops,
Beautiful.
let's go back here. Yeah, where to go? Formatters. Yeah, here. So like, yeah, I've got JSON, C, ES. Yeah, this is the VS Code Prettier extension.
Mhm.
Not that I've done any
Hell
Rust
yeah.
recently, but there's this one, and then yeah, there's yeah VS Code TypeScript. I'm not sure why live share is set for JavaScript. That shouldn't be,
Great
but
question.
anyways, but yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up because like, I not everybody uses VS Code, but a lot of people do, and this is a you basically can specify the language and or languages, and then just specify your formatter, um, and
Mhm.
you can obviously just go like right click format document with, but it's kind of nice to actually it even has it there. If I do that again, you can actually pick and then choose there. But anyways,
Work.
cool. Okay, so uh, this has been like super helpful because like, well, one, I understand a bunch of stuff in ESLint a little better. I mean, at the end of the day, I know it's all like rules, but just understanding the difference of plugin versus just the config and then and so on. Um, so this will be good. We're gonna have two less dependencies in the project. Potentially, I don't know how much faster a difference it'll make, maybe on lower power devices, but not running prettier twice. That
For sure.
can add up. Cool. Okay. We're kind of done here for fixing this, but I know you were talking about if you want, like, I know we're booked for like an hour and a half, but like if
I got time. It's
we
Friday.
were looking at
I've checked out since Thursday. This is great.
yeah, okay. Yeah. I've got feature work to do, but I just fixed an issue before the stream. I had this like infinite re-render in React because of views effect, which like I understand why it happens. It's because like I didn't have the dependency array. Or no, I had the dependency array, but like the reference kept changing. And basically I sorted a couple things out, but
Nice.
so like I definitely feel a lot better because I can like I just have to do a few tweaks like once we get off stream. But you were talking about the ESLint config here and like some stuff you'd change. And if we come back to it here, uh, yeah, Alien saying it's Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, I'm down with it being Saturday, sure. As long as Saturday's tomorrow again. But
Yeah. I interpret it
yeah,
as the weekend time flies by and then you realize it's
yeah.
payday. And it was actually a very depressing comment from Ilian. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Really cheering the stream up.
Yes. Yeah, so you're saying in terms of the config here, there's some things you definitely want to change. And like there's
Yeah.
some things like we've added them because it's like we just noticed these were pain points, but I have a feeling a lot of these are probably in like recommended settings. Um
I actually don't
like
remember, but yeah.
yeah.
So actually, I want to compliment the config. Like, I'm not saying this config is bad. I would add things to the config because you can always do
Okay,
more.
okay.
But like, it's a good start. And specifically, lines 4 and 5, like 4 through 7, made me happy because one, you have to use line 4 to use eslint with TypeScript right now, basically,
Yeah.
setting the parser to TypeScript eslint parser. But then you did an interesting thing. You set the options for that parser to enable Project True, which is what tells TypeScript eslint's parser how to generate type information. But then you don't actually have any rules that I could see that use that type information. So you're kind of setting
Yes.
something up that's an awesome feature and then not using that awesome feature.
Yeah, so I can kind of explain that. So, I don't know what it enables, but basically what happened is I added this rule like I was mentioning once I discovered like there's a lot of places in the code where it's just using camel case for types and interfaces in TypeScript. So,
Hmm.
I enabled that and it worked fine. And then my awesome coworker John is a big fan of Vim and that's what he works in. He works in NeoVim and eslint kept like just killing his editor and not because eslint sucks, that's not what I mean. There was something misconfigured and my other coworker Brandon added this because it was complaining about not so much this was already in there, I believe, or no, maybe he did add it at the same time. Or maybe he tweaked it. But basically, when I added that rule, I had to add the TypeScript eslint parser, but it was complaining about this here. And actually, we can go to the issue if I just give me one sec here. Of course, it opened up in the wrong window. Just come over here. All right. LV. So it basically this fix was related to when I had added it. So yeah, so there's these console warnings. Let's see if there's an issue related. No, there's probably a comment about it. No, okay. Let's see. Let me look for Pascal case the issue. It's in the app issues. Pascal closed is 2023. Okay, run format. No, that's the these are uh use effects. This is something else that's it's warnings that has to get cleaned up, which I created an issue for that a while ago, but okay, yeah, Pascal notation. That's not it. But if we come back to it here, let me just close this because I just closed the chat by accident. Where'd you go, chat? There we
We're
go.
talking about Friday songs. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So my guess is you don't need to enable parser options on Project True. But even if I'm right about that, it's a good thing to
Yeah.
enable if you end up using our recommended with type checking rules. So,
Okay.
the next step you said you wanted to do, that'll help with that. So, yay.
Okay. Yeah, because I think what happened is if I bring this up here, um, there are issues with this setup at the moment actually, which I'm aware of, but it's just been low priority. So let's say like I modify something at the root level. You see how it's giving this parsing error? Hold on a sec.
Ah, ESLint.
ESLint was
We,
config.
by the way,
Yeah.
last year we made that error message much better. It's not good now. Like, there's more we want to do to improve it, but it was way more confusing 2 years ago.
Okay.
Cool.
So so basically
Let's
when
talk
we
about it.
enabled that, yeah. So basically I added that Pascal case ESLint rule or TypeScript ESLint rule and it worked and everything was fine. And then like I was saying, my coworker John kept getting these errors about that rule being enabled and it was talking about setting project true. And I did it did get rid of that error, but I noticed anytime you would modify, I think it's only root level files that you get this error. And like and I can, let me just do
I know
a,
exactly what's happening. I
yeah,
love it.
I just
This
want to
comes up
show,
over and over again because we don't do a
okay,
good job of setting people up to not hit this annoyance until our
okay,
next major
okay.
version.
So I'm just gonna do like uh a config here where I've just modified it. I'm undoing the production source maps, but I'm just gonna do chore and say YOLO. I'll push all the our changes that we did before or after, but um,
YOLO.
so this is gonna run. It's gonna run the pre-commit hooks, and it's gonna give an error now because I've modified the ES. Yeah, here we go.
Mhm.
So, and this only happens when I modify anything at the root level of the project. So I don't know if you kind of, yeah, you, if you want to speak to this. I like I said, I'm aware of this issue. I just haven't fixed it
Sure.
yet because it's not really like a showstopper per se. Um,
Yeah, something tells me that one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 lines of plain text yelling at you about linting your next config is probably not high on your to-do list. Um, yeah, so here's what's happening. Um, TypeScript-eslint, in addition to its normal recommended custom or plugin rules, also
yeah,
adds in the ability for rules to use TypeScript APIs to get type information. That's
yeah,
not normally available in lint rules. Normally, the rules just look at the syntax in your one file at a time. But if you can
okay,
ask TypeScript, like, "Hey, what's the type of this?" Then you can write some really powerful lint rules. The problem is TypeScript was not designed with ESLint in mind. Why would they have done that? So
hmm,
you need to ask TypeScript APIs to generate type info for a file, but by default, TypeScript's like projects like the tsconfig for most projects does not include root level JavaScript files because why would they?
yeah,
So you have enabled TypeScript ESLint with the parser and the rules and everything for
yeah,
type checking, and then given it a file that TypeScript, the APIs that it's using to generate type information, does not know about. So of
okay,
course it doesn't work. Of course, with like the biggest quotes and parentheses that the world has ever
yeah,
seen.
yeah, yeah,
So there are two
okay,
ways you could fix this. Well, three soon, but right now two.
yep,
One is stop using type check linting on your JavaScript files that TypeScript doesn't know about. And there are ways to do
okay,
that. Like we have a disabled type checked config you can extend from, or you can like just use overrides for TypeScript files to enable linting.
okay,
Or you can enable type. You can tell TypeScript how to generate types for this file. You can like add
okay,
JS files and the root to your tsconfig, or make like a tsconfig.eslint.json that also allows these.
okay. And is that
Do
just
those two
adding
options make
to the
sense to
ink?
you?
Yeah, they do. Is it just adding to the includes here? Is that all we're doing?
Two things. One,
Or
yes, add to the includes, but also if you
okay.
scroll up, you said allow JS false. So TypeScript won't look at your JavaScript files
Oh,
by
okay.
default. So what
Okay.
most
Yeah.
projects do, including mine, is we'll make a separate tsconfig called tsconfig.eslint.json, which extends from your base
Okay.
and then also allows JS, turns off any emit, and then allows your JS files, like in the
Okay.
include. Does that make
Okay. And
sense?
what's the reason? Yeah. What's the reason for doing a separate file though? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, if you're using a bundler, meta framework, etc., such as Next, you probably actually don't need it. You're probably right to just put it in this file. I actually don't know why you
Okay.
put allow JS false. Um,
This was before my time, so because
sure.
typically allowing JS makes sense to me because like you still wanted to you wanted to type, like even though it's not a TypeScript file, it can obviously still type check it. So,
Yeah,
but actually, let's go take. I'm just curious why it was done. Uh,
sure.
let's
There was a
see
good
here.
reason 18 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if we come here, let me just open it up. Okay, let's
By the
get
way, I
back
posted
here.
the docs page for this stuff in the chat if anyone's curious.
Okay, cool. Um, cool, cool. So we will have more changes. Okay, this is an issue. Okay. Okay, this is the issue. I don't see any PRs linked to it. There's chore major, skip CI, chore. Um, yeah, I don't. see much going on in here. There's trying to see add compliance to check PR. Okay, maybe it's in there. No, that's not it. Um, okay. Well, basically there was a reason, but I don't see there a reason not to have it because like uh you know okay, so let's put it to true. Uh, it's gonna get
Cool.
reviewed anyways, and okay, so we put that to true in the config, and what
Mhm.
else you said we had to include the I guess root.js files. Is that
Yeah. Well, whatever the path to your next config is. Um, I
oh
think it's
yeah,
like
I could
app
just do it
slash next
directly.
config.
Yeah,
Yeah.
next. Okay,
Cool. I don't think you need the
cool.
preceding dot slash. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so if we come back here now. Okay, so we still
And
have a
restart.
parsing error. Oh yeah,
You have
okay.
to restart your eslint config because it doesn't know that the config changed, which is a whole other situation that we're trying to fix.
Okay. Also, pro tip, if you do need to restart, like if eslint isn't working, you can restart it from VS Code. You can also, I'm sure you've had to do this a lot, is restart your TypeScript server sometimes. So those are all available there. I don't know how you do it from the command line, to be honest. I've always done it through VS Code. So. Okay, so that's fixed it, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay,
By the way,
cool.
there is a
So,
VS Code issue about needing to restart the way you just did that I'm about to post in the chat.
okay. Yeah, and there's like, here, I'm gonna drop this link on YouTube as well, the one that you shared about the TypeScript linting. Yeah, what was I gonna say?
Cool.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is super cool because like that whole error, like I mean, I could have dug into it more. It's just like I said, priority wise, I haven't just
Yeah.
hasn't made sense to look into it yet. But this is nice. This is some cleanup because it's actually caused problems several times where, well, not that we don't modify the Next.js config often. Like the last time I modified it was I think maybe a month ago, where I enabled the production source maps 3 weeks ago. And
Hmm.
basically, I got that lint error like we saw before. And basically, what I did was I just added a dash dash no dash verify to when I did the commit because like I knew
Yep.
everything was formatted correctly. I was just like, I know what I'm doing, but that's also not a good thing to like get in the habit of, right? So I'm actually glad that we've sorted this out because it's come up at least 2 or 3 times where people have modified some root files and this popped up. So
Sure.
I'm just
I do
wondering
want to
if there's
note
any other
also,
files. Yeah.
I want to
Yeah,
say
it's okay.
I slash we feel your pain. The fact that we just had to make changes to your TS config to get ESLint to work is like morally reprehensible to me. Um, there is a new, currently experimental option that we in TypeScript ESLint are iterating on, which will make it
Okay.
so that even if your TS config doesn't recognize your file, we'll like figure it out for you. It's
Okay.
called project service. So project true would be like all caps experimental underscore project serve or use project service true.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying use that. I'm saying in the future, in like V8 or something, we're currently on V6, about to be
Okay.
V7. We will make the project service, hopefully, the recommended way to enable typing, which would mean
Okay.
that it does a lot more work for you. So you, the end user, don't have to like dig into your TS config and read like 300 paragraphs of docs to figure this stuff out. I'm sure
Okay,
you could
gotcha.
do it, but like who the hell has the time for that crap? So fingers
Yeah.
crossed it'll come out later this year.
Yeah. Even with that saying feel your pain, like I am super appreciative of all these tools. So just want to like say that explicitly. Like even though sometimes, tooling can be annoying, it's like the amount of automation these things do, like uh I don't know. I remember in university I took a because I'm a little longer in the tooth there. I actually took like an assembler course and I had to take a COBOL. Well, I didn't have to take a COBOL course. I just decided to. And like formatting is literally like everything in COBOL. Like if you don't do a tab, then the program doesn't run. So like
Yeah.
imagine I'm sure somebody's probably created a COBOL prettier config or prettier support. You know what I mean? Like it's just like I say this all the time. Like even though like there's a lot more things that are complex in web development today, it's still a pretty amazing time to be a web developer, in my opinion. Still, I mean, I don't think I share this
For
opinion
sure.
alone, you know, but um, so you can set up prettier for COBOL. Okay. Uh,
Zero answers, unknown. No, I totally agree.
yeah,
I think that we are exponentially it's a slow exponent, but a slow exponential consistent improvement in tools is happening. I think
yeah,
that
yeah,
as things like ESLint, TypeScript, ESLint, TypeScript, and so on get better, we're seeing more and more ability to write code faster. This is totally ignoring AI, which is also helping things. So I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
really
Totally.
exciting. And as these things, as we better learn how to make it easier for people to do these things, like
Yeah, yeah.
the project service stuff, it's going to be better and better over time, and that's honestly thrilling. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. Nacho Libre agrees as well. Um, no, this is cool. This is like honestly, like I said, super helpful to just understand a little more about ESLint and obviously fix the issue that we had in the repo, which is great as well. Um, I'm curious, like, you work in open source full time. You're on the TypeScript ESLint team. You're also on the ESLint team now, like you said. Is there because I've never contributed to the project, but it's and I'm bringing this up because like it's happened again recently, but people always ask me, you know, like what should I contribute to open source? And my answer always is, and it's not like you know, deflecting an answer kind of thing. It's just like I only contribute to things that either I find super interesting or it's stuff I use where, you know, if it can help me, that's great. And if it helps somebody else, that's amazing, you know? And I'm curious, like for ESLint or TypeScript ESLint, are there like good first issues in there, or like how approachable is these projects? And like I know we've streamed together before. We created a custom ESLint rule. You know, I think I found doing that, you know, pretty approachable, because it kind of it kind of made abstract syntax trees a lot less scary because of the nice APIs.
Mhm.
Um, but how do you see like people contributing to the project that aren't necessarily like super duper power users of TypeScript or JavaScript? Like, is it approachable for like somebody who's like, you know, I like this project, I would like to help?
Great question. For sure. The problem with things like ESLint, TypeScript, static analysis is that they are falsely intimidating. People see
Okay.
acronyms like AST, abstract syntax tree, and they freak the heck out,
Yeah.
which is very
It is an
reasonable, honestly.
intimidating word.
It is. What the hell is an abstract syntax? Syntax abstract. What the like it? I'm saying
Yes.
they freak the heck out because I would freak the heck out, and I see a lot of people do it. It's like a totally reasonable reaction.
Yeah.
Um, Josh Boltigerg.
Oh, you see my you're seeing my screen. I'm trying to find your GitHub sponsor link. That's I forgot I
Oh,
was
it's
sharing my screen with you.
hi.joshuakgoldberg.com if you're looking for
Okay.
it. Like HI, like
Hi.
hello.
Okay. Hi. Joshua. Okay, there
Yeah.
it's actually popping up. There we go.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I'm just gonna mention
Yeah.
that I'm interrupting you temporarily, but if you
No,
do
you're good.
want to sponsor Josh on GitHub, you know, he's doing a lot of great work. I'm pretty sure I'm still sponsoring you. If not, I will rectify that after
Thanks.
this stream.
Appreciate it.
Um, but it's like we had a whole conversation about contributing to open source. I can find that. I took a short clip from our whole discussion, uh, but yeah, it's kind of tough working in open source in terms of getting compensation. But you seem to be pretty successful at it. Like we were talking briefly before the stream, it seems to be panning out okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I do want to answer, by the way, before I forget, your
yeah,
question
yeah,
from earlier of how approachable these things. The concept of an AST or whatever, like this stuff is well explained. It's not as well explained as like React, but like we've been very careful to put effort into making docs that are approachable for newcomers. You know, have good first issues, good contributing guidelines, docs, and so on.
yeah.
So I'd say if you are willing and able to separate abilities to overcome the hesitancy, the fear of unknown terms like ASTs, then yes, we are approachable.
Okay.
A lot of people very reasonably are not. Like for them, it's scary enough to go into open source, like to do things in
Yeah, yeah.
public where other people can yell at you. Like, ooh, another like thing that actually once you start doing it is much less scary than you realized. But like
Yeah, yeah, for
that's
sure.
one hurdle to overcome at a time. So I say yes, please come approach us and don't be afraid. But if you are afraid, it's totally reasonable and okay. We're there if and when you're ready for us.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, I'm pretty busy at work right now, but I think that's something I'd kind of like. I want to do put that on. That's on my bucket list. Contribute to a project like that. I think like React is definitely way more difficult to contribute to now. Like I've never contributed to it, but like 6 years ago, it was a different story probably. But like I've heard multiple times from like I think more recently Dan Abramov saying like you have to have so much context about the project now before you can even like approach it. And I'm not saying that to discourage people, but that's kind of what he was alluding to, and I can kind of get that because a lot is they
Yeah.
literally rewrote it. But yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna check out ESLint. I'm gonna take a note of it, and also to be clear again, like we mentioned this at the beginning, but there's the ESLint project, and then there's TypeScript ESLint, and um, there's still separate orgs, like you said, right? I think we said that before the stream,
Yeah.
or was that on stream? I can't remember. But
I
anyways,
don't remember
okay, cool.
either.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
awesome.
eventually ESLint, there's like very early stages talk from the ESLint core team, which I'm not a member of, I'm just a committer, from like Nicholas Sakis, the creator, lead maintainer, about doing a big rewrite of ESLint, which would make
Okay.
it so there's like, well, it's very up in the air, but my hope is that one thing that's been talked about does happen, which is building in like a pluggable concept of types, which would mean
Okay.
that like you would have other providers for like language specific things like Flow or TypeScript or Esno or like whatever things are popular
Hmm.
equivalent to TypeScript.
Okay. Yeah,
So at
gotcha.
that point, TypeScript ESLint would become much smaller as a project, which I think is like really cool to think about.
Yeah.
But short term, we're separate. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Yeah. No, it's great work. It's like I was saying before, won't say every project, but I'd say probably a very large majority of anything front end Node.js TypeScript is using these projects. So
Yeah.
thanks for all the good work.
My
Awesome.
pleasure. Thanks for hanging
Cool.
out. Thanks for
Yeah, yeah,
all
no,
this
it's
was
always great
honestly
hanging
fun.
out
I
with you.
like this.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I really appreciate the explainers and stuff because, like I said, like had I not seen that blog post and chatted with you, like I would have like basically had that in my configs forever until like somebody just said don't do that for some reason. So, um, but yeah, I like it. I like understanding the tools I use, so it was really good
Yeah.
to just kind of break it down. I dropped some links where folks can find you, and I shamelessly plugged for you your GitHub sponsors. If that's It's not something you have to do, people, but if you are interested and have some spare cash that you would like to help support Josh's work for these awesome projects, go ahead and do that. And yeah, I don't know anything else you want to mention. You got it? Like what do you have going on in the next little while? You heading to any conferences or anything or?
Yeah. I just thanks for asking. I just started doing like planning recently. So my next
Okay.
conference, I'm like going to my website to make sure I don't miss them, is I'm going Emerging Tech East, which is a Philly thing, Philly conference
Okay.
in April. I'm going to be at City JS London in May, which is why Alien and I were telling you to come to London. um,
Okay. Okay.
JS Heroes later in May in Romania, and then React Summit in June in Amsterdam. That's the current list. Very excited about
Awesome.
this.
Yeah. And Elian says, "Woo!" So, uh, I'm assuming that's how he sounded when he wrote it, but maybe he says "woo" differently. Um, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm hoping to get to some conferences in person. I have one in Montreal I'm doing in a couple weeks. It's my
Ooh,
first like actual in person. I've given lots of talks but they've been virtual and like I've been on like panels or like I gave like a talk for Hacktoberfest in 2020 and I've given lots of like meetup talks, but everything's just been all virtual and last year I gave a talk at Node Congress that was in Berlin, but I couldn't make it to Berlin, so that was virtual too. So I'm hoping to get some more in-person talks. One to give the talks, and but honestly, just to meet folks that I typically only see online. Including
Yeah, man.
yourself. So yeah.
Are you excited? First IRL talk soon coming up?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I'm sure I'll be nervous. I'm sure, like, even though I'm very comfortable, like, live coding and streaming, it's a little different if, like, one, I don't know how many people will be at the talk yet, but I'm sure I'll have some nerves, and I'm I'm guessing it's a pretty normal thing to have nerves, but who knows? Maybe I'll just be like I'm cool as a cucumber, but we'll see. I'll have to report back. But
Please do.
I think the thing I'm more not worried about, more curious about, well, how it'll go is like there'll be a projector. I'll have my laptop. I'm gonna have my slides, but like when I show code or like because I'm gonna be talking. I'm giving two talks, and the first one's about how to write end-to-end tests for a browser extension. Um,
That's
so
interesting. I've never seen a
yeah,
talk on that. That's awesome.
so that's why I decided to do it. I'm gonna try and shop that around at other conferences, but after I do it here, like, because you get better at your talks over time too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, because we have an open source browser extension, which I don't know how widely used it is, but basically just like a website, right? Like, you got to make sure that it functions well. So we we do have it set up with Playwright with like I think maybe one kind of smoke test end-to-end test. It was really just
Mm.
proof of concept to get an end-to-end test working with a browser extension. And you can do this in Cypress and in Playwright, but as I dug into it a little more, Cypress and Playwright both allow you to test the extension, but you know how some extensions have pop-ups and stuff like from the menu bar and so on.
Yeah.
Uh, at least at the time, like 4 or 5 months ago, Cypress doesn't support that, but Playwright does. So I'm gonna kind of just talk about E2E testing in general, and then talk about Cypress and Playwright because they're pretty much the big players. There's definitely I've used others in the past, but I would say nowadays, if you're at least in the JavaScript ecosystem, those are the pretty much the go-tos. And then I'll just kind of talk about how you load up the browser extension, and then we'll write a couple tests. That's the part I'll do live coding, and so I'm more curious like how that will go like on a live stage. I'm not worried about.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have my phone in case I need to tether for some reason, but everything should be offline as well. Actually, my slides are in Google Sheets, so and it's just have some backups, like because
Sure.
uh, yeah, but yeah, I'm pretty excited. So we'll see how it goes.
That's awesome.
I'll report back.
I have confidence in you as a speaker. I think you're going to be great, personally.
Cool.
I don't
Thanks,
know
man.
anything, but that's my opinion.
Awesome. Cool, cool. Well, this has been super fun, Josh. Always love hanging out with you. And also, if folks are interested, Josh does stream on Twitch as well. So just go give a follow to Joshua K. Goldberg on Twitch. And yeah, thanks again for hanging. And everybody else, no stream on Monday. I'm snowboarding. But I'll be back the following week. Is it yeah, the 19th? Let me check the schedule here real quick here. I know I'm hanging out with the creator of Polyplane, which is a front end tool for like
Wait,
um
Killian?
yeah, yeah.
Killian's awesome. I
Okay,
say
yeah.
hi. We met in Liberty JS last year
Okay, yeah.
in Philly.
Yeah, I'll actually he's the next time I'm hanging because here I'll drop that in the chat. Because next week, like I said, I'm snowboarding, and then I think the week after there's something going on the Monday because it's blocked off. So yeah, see you later, Elliot. Yeah, so I'm hanging with Killian, and then in March I'm hanging out with April Wenzel, who's the founder
Ooh.
of Compassionate Coding, and then I got some other stuff going on later. I haven't booked some people for past April, but I'm hanging with Jamin Holmgren as well from Infinite Red. We're gonna dig into some
Huh.
React Native and their project they have, their boilerplate project called Ignite. So excited about all that
Dope.
stuff, and yeah, cool, cool. All right.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks everybody. And yeah, Josh, if you don't mind just staying on 1 sec, and everybody else, I'll see you in a couple weeks probably. Later, everybody.